The Problems of Childhood Trauma / The Evils of Nature and the Man in the Black Suit by Stephen King. Written and conceptualized by Carlos Martinez. Before I start the essay, I wish that you read the short story by Stephen King before you absorb this content to fully understand the message and references I wrote into this essay. My goal is to make a work so dense and deep that it makes the reader, the listener, or the writer think so hard about the work that it blows their mind. Please delve into my absurd way of storytelling with an open mind and think hard with me, as you are the listener and I am the writer. Otherwise, enjoy the breakdown. I enjoy your time and your curiosity. Have you ever been in a moment of despair or joy and looked at yourself within to ask if you deserve to experience this moment? Or instead, maybe you feel there's a reason behind it. Many may not be able to answer that question comfortably. In fact, many may not understand it. In cases of bad karma, let's say you take $20 from the sidewalk. A week later, you lose $30 and you remember when you took the money off the floor. Now you see the connection, right? In cases of good karma, maybe you give someone $30 for lunch. A week later, you find a $20 bill on the sidewalk and take it. Looks like this time taking the $20 was the right option because it's karma coming back to praise you. Except, do you really want to risk taking the bill? Considering the factor of karma snagging its revenge afterwards? Apply this to a developing child. Imagine this child breaks a vase, knowing trouble will ensure. The child will lie and tell the parents that the dog broke it. The parents will respond by telling him to be honest, or else karma will catch up one day and take its toll. So, hoping to diminish the bad karma, he tells the truth, and the parents then punish the child with no television for a week. Now, the child has been taught by means of control and fear instead of morality and sensical thought. This causes the child to grow up and question if karma is a real thing. For example, if the child sees someone lose $20, knowing that he's been punished for doing the right thing before, will he believe in good and bad karma at all? Maybe he steals it, maybe he returns it. Either way, the inconsistent raising of the child's parents have created this paradoxical sense of karma, when the concept of it was meant to teach a lesson of what comes around goes around. See how one mistake in a parent's way can influence the way a child views the world? Nonetheless, it's a dilemma that reflects trauma onto a child that affects the way that they grow up, even if it's a minor moral code. Now apply this to the world of Gary, whose brother had recently died from a bee sting. Gary's mother constantly berates him with beliefs that bee stings can't kill a human being, and that they've must have been another factor to her son's death. She's a conspiracist without knowing the conflicts that this will cause for her son down the road. Let's break it down. During the scene where the man shows up for the first time, there's a sense of fear in Gary's body, obviously. There's also a familiar bee that sits atop his nose as a figure behind him watches. Right away does his mind wander into the realm of possibility that this bee might be the one that killed his brother. Except that a theory like this would have been impossible, and even he doubts it in this solidified moment of despair. He calls the criddle a devil bee, which adds to the symbolism that has been rising since this experience. Gary describes seeing moments of his childhood in his last moments as he daydreams about possibility getting stung. This alone is a theory brought by scientists who claim in the moments of death that the brain will search for memories to compensate to save you in the form of flashbacks. This phenomena has been popularized as your life flashing before your eyes. Gary is an inch away from death, and yet there's still someone standing a yard away acknowledging nothing of his trembling despair. This building tension continues, the wavering of trees, the licks of water, the fluttering of the bees' wings. Then, he hears a clap. Behind him was a man with starving flames within his eyes, itching to take his soul. The moment after this clap, the bee falls into his lap, an unexpected death to add a climax. Gary swears his voice sounded like Dan's, his brother's. And although it seems the man had saved him, there's still that primal fear of death smoldering into his fiery heart. The man walks up to Gary and tells him a quote that resonates him forever. A man can go his entire life without seeing a mockingbird, but that does not mean they don't exist. And in terms of symbolism, you can go your entire life knowing you have trauma, but that doesn't mean it's not there. Or you can go your entire life without knowing you have trauma. An interpretation of this is valid, as the man here starts to spew utter nonsense to terrorize Gary. Things like threats to eat him alive, and out of all of these things, one that haunts him the most, the sprouting of the lie that his mother had died the same way Dan did, by a bee sting. The figure, whose identity is still safely secured as a wasp nest in the corner of an attic, spews this absurd lie that his mother had been killed. He also says that since his mother is dead, his dad would need another way to satisfy himself, and would use Gary for that purpose. A purpose that is yet to be dissected by his young and pubescent mind. The man dressed in black again gives unsolicited details of this unforeseen loss. He rambles on and on about the scene and how it happened, how his mother was washing dishes when a bee had crawled atop her face, and before she could react to what it was, she killed it with the swift action of her arm. Her brain's motorized reaction was the result of her illusionized demise. There's a reason for this description, the illusionized aspect of it at least. The man starts to paint a picture of how she cried and screamed on the kitchen floor for help, but not a single soul had come to help her. No one except his beloved dog, who had entered the scene and licked her tears up as if they were a snack, left her to succumb to the bee's toxins. This kind of ranting sounds similar, doesn't it? Gary's own mother shares an identical sensation of ranting about theories for why her son died, parallel to this man. This connection comes from the fact that this entire scene might be Gary's reflecting off of his brother's death and his mother's unnatural way to cope for the loss. His mother's deflection of her own trauma has caused a cycle of pain that has caused her son to grieve in an unhealthy way. And if you look at it, this kind of mirroring is the problem in many current world parenting issues. The deflecting causes a trauma cycle, one that is so prominent in cultures that it creates a problem known as generational trauma. The cycle can be visualized. The top point is in the mother's case, who deflects her inhumane way of coping of her son, who silently absorbs these traits and notes of their toxic quality on the human brain. Except, he's also afflicted in the worst case scenario. Directly before his death, he starts to share his mother's traits. The silently absorbed information forms as a way to diminish anxiety. Now, the way the cycle is intended to go is that after this experience, the hurt in him by his parent is supposed to ferment inside him until eventually this trauma caused by a light-hearted scenario causes him to hurt another loved one, or project these insecurities onto someone else, who also adapts these projections. Can you see where this is going? This is the same way that the mother in the example at the beginning had acted with the use of karma to try and teach a kid a lesson. Gary has become desensitized to the natural because of his mother's unnaturalness. Trauma chases you the way that death chases you. It will catch up to you no matter the consequence. In this scene, the man starts to sprint towards Gary and hopes to devour him. You can't rid of trauma without fighting what caused it. Except, the disbelief within Gary is sealed by loss and interference by people he trusts. Except, if fear is the only thing that envelops you, how are you expected to fight back? Maybe, just maybe, Gary was meant to see these moments in hopes that whatever meaning he was supposed to interpret would help him in some way. Like the world, or no, the universe, had wanted Gary to realize the cycle so he doesn't add to it. The scene could be the subconscious of his brain telling Gary that he needs to heal and that he doesn't realize the cycle that he's trapped in and how to break it. Fight it, not run from it. Except he is far too young to acknowledge this. However, there's another question to ask. Is he hallucinating or is he projecting? It seems that the bee is a literary device used by King to implant a parallel into the story. If the bee had never showed up, would the scene be analyzed differently? Would the intention or meaning behind the entire story had changed as a whole? The answer is yes. If this man had shown up without the added complexity of the bee, then this would have been a scenario of the supernatural, but it could be both, and they should take a different approach to it. Now you can look at the entire meaning of the scene differently. Does the man in black represent Gary's trauma and loss, unable to move on? Or does the man represent the nature of evil and death? As you see the scene where the bee falls to his lap, the bee dies at the command of the man's clap, as well as the resurfaced memories in Gary's childhood, all with the mention of the devil, solidifies that this man might be death itself. He's seen straight up lying to Gary by spreading nonsense, regarded with the nickname Father of Lies. This character dressed in black also mentions God and how Gary could do him a favor by dying as a lost soul and succumb to the depths of hell instead of trying to receive awareness. The aspect is further deepened when Gary is forced to sacrifice the fish he caught to try and weave his way to freedom. He rips the fish guts out in an attempt to secure the aggressor's appetite. Then, he compares the fish's lifeless stare to his mother's so-called death. A subtle but powerful comparison. Gary then feeds the fish to the young man. His mouth widens like a hinge, creaking open to show an array of teeth to swallow the thing whole without a single chew. The man's appearance looks similar to that of a shark, and how it has an endless stomach with the insensitive to mindlessly eat anything it could fit in his mouth. These personality traits come together to prove that this freak of nature could be disguised as an all-knowing deity, with the only way to survive is by preying on the natural. Gary mentions the possibility of the entire sequence being a dream, and it shifts the perspective of his torment. If sleep is the cousin of death, then wouldn't this terror be the brother? Death in this case is devolved by the possibility that Dan was the first to fall to an underlying bee allergy. Back then, the time that the story takes place, there was most likely a knowledge blockage with allergens and that bees are a main cause of them. The man in the black suit was death, except it was a fluke, as Gary had responded differently to his brother and remained calm to avoid a severe sting. So the reaction to destined death can change one's fate. Maybe Gary was prophesied to die, but due to his thoughtful nature, was able to wiggle his way out of destiny. Similar to how the instinct and natural selection can save a hopeless animal in a forest. Simply, the entire story can be broken down into natural response. The fears of hunger and Mother Nature's obsession with selection. Gary's depiction of the man's mouth appearing to be a shark also wraps another layer to this angle a little more. The man is simply the act of nature paying its toll. No matter how innocent one may be, the homing demise of death will always follow. You can't run from it, deny it, and you can't cheat it, and you definitely can't ignore it. With this new realization, the Mockingbird quote changes as well. A man can go his entire life without knowing his destiny, but that does not mean he doesn't have one. I'll leave you to dissect that one, but I'll give you a hint. It has to do with Gary's unexpected survival of the experience. This quote can be applied to many things in life, whether it be materialistic, lesson learning, morality, or just common sense. It is meant to be written as a universal interpretation. Truly, this short story was more than likely written around the idea of the sentence and how it can be used to explain many of the situation in Gary's lives or others' lives. As a writer, I often use sentences or quotes to base an entire subject's theme off of, although it's outdated and unlikely to produce a story as cohesive and Except, I think it's nice when a story only has one central theme to analyze upon. Maybe the story was just a way for King to give us a quick scare, but that could be an understatement as it won the O. Henry Award for Best Short Fiction in 1996. Hey, just saying that they don't give those awards out to just anyone. Anyways, the quote is a code for the symbolism, and it loops together every idea within the author's consciousness. From evil of nature to childhood trauma, death is still an important thing to discuss even if the subject matter is gray. Whatever interpretation you get from the story and whatever meaning King wanted behind it, one day we'll all find a way to change the Mockingbird quote to discover our own troubles, and hopefully, we'll all bring that cycle of trickle-down trauma to an end. On the topic of writing, I should say that also this is the first time uploading to the public like this, and that I have another project similar to this one in the works. One of my own short stories that I have yet to finish writing and recording, and this one has more effort and a larger cast per se. It's experimental and I feel a lot of people will enjoy. With that, have a good day and remember to express yourself creatively.